Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm Dr. Ava. I'm an internal medicine hospitalist, and I'm really, really passionate about increasing diversity in medicine. I wrote a book called Paging Dr. U, geared to those interested in going into the medical field. I'm the owner of Dr. Eva B Coaching, and I coach future medical students. I am hosting Health Moments with Dr. Ava for season 5 of the Hope TV. When it comes to your health, it's important you get your information from a source you can trust. Health Moments with Dr. Ava is about empowerment, empowering you to take charge of your health and well being. We keep it fun, we keep it interesting and informative. During the show, you will hear me give some general medical information. But as always, I recommend you seek the advice of your own personal doctor. Today's show is one really dear to my heart. It's about kidney disease and kidney transplant in the African American community. End stage kidney disease and earlier stages of chronic kidney disease represent one of the most dramatic examples of racial and ethnic disparities in health in our nation. African Americans are 3 times more likely to require renal replacement therapy, which you may know as dialysis, as compared to their white peers. Although African Americans comprise 13% of the US population, we make up about 35% of people with kidney failure. It is a major public health issue. As a group, we also tend to have more risk factors for kidney disease than most other groups. Diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, and if you have a family history of diabetes or kidney disease, those are the most common risk factors for developing end stage renal disease. If you develop end stage renal disease, you essentially have two options. You either need to get a transplant to receive a healthy kidney from a donor, or you need to start dialysis. I have a guest here with me today who is also a physician and a 2 time kidney transplant recipient. Dr. Philip Douillon is a board certified neurologist who completed his residency in neurology at NYU and fellowship in clinical neurophysiology at NYP Well Cornell Medical College. He's the founder and CEO of the Health, Wellness, and Technology Company, the Inley Brain Fit Institute, which was created to provide people's health and quality of life. He has also created individualized exercise regimens based on a person's medical and neurological needs, as well as their personal goals. He developed a Brain Fit app released in November of 2018, which is designed to teach people about the impact of food and exercise on the brain and the body. He's also the author of the book Neuroplasticity, Your Brain's Superpower, which speaks to the brain's ability to learn, adapt, and heal. He is also the creator and instructor of the online class Take Charge of Your Brain in 30 Days, in which he teaches people with medical and neurological disorders to become the leaders that their brains need so that they can be healthy and successful. Welcome, Dr. Douillon, to the show. Thank you so much for being here with us today. How are
Thank you
you?
so much for having me. I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to sharing my story with you.
Awesome. We're so happy you're here today. So tell us a little bit about your story with kidney disease. When were you first diagnosed?
Yeah, so my history with kidney disease starts when I was 18 years old. And so now
Wow.
I'm 42. So I've had kidney disease more than half my life, my entire adult life. And at 18, I was a freshman in college. I was a college athlete. I had gone for a physical and failed my physical, and they really didn't know why. But they cleared me and allowed me to continue to play my sport. And so I was out of town competing, and I collapsed on the court and had to be rushed to an emergency room in this small little town. And it wasn't until weeks later that I was diagnosed with kidney failure. And so I went through college in kidney failure. I went through medical school in kidney failure. And then, by the grace of God, 8 days after I walked across the stage at Carnegie Hall to receive my medical diploma, I received a kidney transplant. And my donor
So,
at that time was my father.
so let's talk about that for a second. So you went through college and medical school with kidney failure. You mean you were put on dialysis or were you in chronic kidney disease at that time?
Yeah, so I was in end stage renal disease, but did everything possible to avoid dialysis.
Did they
And
ever tell you why you ended up in end stage renal disease at such a young age?
yeah, so initially I was misdiagnosed. I was misdiagnosed with post-streptococcal glomerulonephritis.
Mm,
Inflammation of the kidneys that was due to a strep infection. But later on, it was found that this was more of an autoimmune issue that I
mm.
had and not something related to a virus that I had gotten earlier on.
Okay, I see. When you first realized that you would need a kidney transplant, what were your feelings?
I went through my 20s and I was not happy. I mean, I was angry, I was resentful, I was like, why me? You know, I never did drugs, never drank alcohol, never did any of these things. You know, I was an athlete, I took really good care of my body. And so nobody teaches you how to deal with facing your mortality, especially at an age where you're supposed to feel immortal, right?
Right.
And so I probably did not handle that time period as well as I could have. But it certainly did teach me a lot. And it taught me really about how to relate to the patients I was going to care for. So that way I could guide them through some of the tough situations that they were going to go through.
Is that why you wanted to be a doctor?
No, actually, I wanted to be a doctor before I was diagnosed
Okay.
with kidney disease. And actually, one of the things that I tell people when they have some kind of chronic illness is not to so strongly identify with the illness that you have. There has to be a bigger picture, a purpose in your life. And actually, that purpose that I had at the time of wanting to be a doctor allowed me to focus on that and not so much the disease that I was battling.
Right, right. Yeah, that's powerful. So, what was it like health-wise waiting for a kidney transplant?
So it was tough. I mean, so I was chronically fatigued. I had pains. I had chronic migraines. I had difficulty focusing, especially in medical school. So, especially in that second year of medical school, I had to make the decision not even to go to classes and really to do the studying on my own. So I had to make a lot of adjustments. But, there were things that I was still doing, like exercising, spending time with loved ones. Those things really helped to sort of carry me through.
Okay. So, I don't know if you answered that question, but did you ever have to go on dialysis while you were waiting?
So I didn't have to go on dialysis the first time. So did everything to avoid dialysis, and I was able to get that kidney transplant before I needed dialysis. But I certainly had to go on dialysis the second time. I actually had to go on dialysis earlier this year, and I was on dialysis for quite a few months.
So, the first time, did you get a donor, a living donor kidney transplant or deceased donor kidney transplant? And how old were you the first time?
So the first time I was 28 years old, first time I had a transplant, and I was fortunate. I was able to get a transplant from my father, who is still, alive and doing incredibly well and active. So I was certainly blessed that my dad was able to give me
He gave
one
you
of his
life.
kidneys.
He gave your life.
He saved my life. He's given me life twice.
Okay. So you said the first time you got a kidney, so you and your dad were a match, a perfect match.
Yep.
And then
And
you got
actually,
a
you don't
kidney.
need to be a perfect match.
Well,
So,
yeah,
right. So we share half the DNA.
right.
So the way that they score it, he was a good enough match for me, but certainly not a perfect match.
Okay, okay. So how was the process like going through the surgery and having your dad go through his surgery? Walk us through that process a little bit.
Yeah, I think for me at that point, it was tough. It was dealing with a lot of guilt, right? I mean, I was certainly worried for my dad. I didn't want anything to go wrong. I had gotten into a point where, you know, uh, I was struggling and really was at a point where I was like, look, not everybody is meant to last forever. I'm 28 years old. I've had a good run. Like, I didn't want anyone to sacrifice that way for me. But I was lucky because he really fought for me and sort of pushed through. And at that point, I don't think I would have taken a kidney from anybody else, right? And I'm so grateful for going through that experience because just to think about the things that I've done from the time I'm 28 to now at 42, I've accomplished so much. I've helped so many people. I have these two amazing little boys, and so not only did he help save my life, but he's also helped touch the lives of all the people that I've positively impacted.
Wow, that's so powerful.
Today, we're going to be making some key lime cupcakes.
You ready to play band with us? I'm gonna play my clarinet.
And Elmo's gonna play his drum. Drum loud.
Oh, well, you know what to do, Julia.
Julia knows.
With Julia's autism, loud sounds can be too much.
But she still loves to make music. Play band.
Early screening for autism can make a lifetime of difference. Find out more at screenforautism.org.
Why do you think these men don't want to get married?
It really depends on an individual's why we're getting married. A lot of the things that make a man good are kind of intangible. And his credit score shouldn't be the metric for what makes him good.
Did the kidney transplant give you your normal life back?
Yeah, so it gave me my normal life back. I felt really great. I felt really strong. I was able to go and do my intern year and residency and fellowship and practice like any other doctor would. I was able to be physically active and travel and have a family. So it really gave me a second lease on life, an appreciation for what life truly has to offer.
Yeah, yeah. So you said 2 times. So what happened to the first kidney?
So then after about 14 years, the initial disease process started to come back. And right
Okay.
before the pandemic, I was actually in the process of being worked up for a new kidney transplant. And the pandemic hit and kind of shut all of that down. And I knew with my medical history that if I got this virus, that it was not going to be good for me, right? People with chronic conditions, underlying conditions don't do as well. And so I kept myself in a really small bubble for almost a year, did pretty well. And then January of this year, I got COVID and I got really, really sick and was hospitalized for 2 weeks. And the virus took its toll on my body, but especially on my kidneys. So the remaining kidney function I had left just kind of went out the window. And at that point, I had to face what was actually going to be my biggest fear, which was that I needed to do dialysis. Yeah, I
Mm.
had never wanted to do dialysis, in part because the way that I saw people in the hospital doing dialysis, it always looked like they were so sick and almost ready to die or waiting to die. And so I had to make a decision. I had to decide if I was going to do dialysis the way that I saw all those other people do it, or if I was going to do it my way. And so I decided to do dialysis in a way that really worked for me and continued to allow me to have a really good life.
Peritoneal dialysis or hemodialysis?
So I did hemodialysis. So I
Okay.
would go to a center three
Mhm.
times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I organized the schedule in a way that worked for me. So a lot of times after dialysis, people just don't feel so great. So I would do dialysis at the end of the day, the last shift. So that way I'd get home, I'd eat, and I'd sleep off, any cramps I was feeling or any lethargy I was feeling. And the next day I would wake up and I would feel pretty good. And I would have that day and the next day and a half to kind of do what I needed to do, including work. While I was on dialysis, I traveled because there are dialysis centers all over the world, certainly all over this country. And there are people whose job it is to, if you want to travel, they'll set it up for you. So I would be traveling back and forth. I was, playing sports with my kids. I was physically active. Um, I had a local news company following me around, so I did interviews while on dialysis. I used dialysis, that time period, that 4-hour time period, really as a time for personal growth. I would read, I would listen to podcasts, listen to people that were inspirational. I would rest if I needed to rest. But I certainly decided to do dialysis in a way that really worked well for me.
Okay. Okay. So then you got your second transplant.
So I got my second transplant at the end of May.
Was it a living donor transplant again?
Yep. So I am truly blessed because my cousin-in-law, so we're not blood related, he is married to my cousin, decided that he would donate a kidney to me. And so my life has been saved twice, both by really amazing Black men,
People that you knew.
people that I knew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah. So that's why it's so important to put the word out there, talk to people, advocate for people, because sometimes your kidney, your organ might be at proximity, very close to you. It
Yeah,
may not come from a stranger. It might come from somebody you know. So,
absolutely. And it
uh-huh,
may
go ahead.
come in a way that you don't even have to ask, right? Because if people know that you are struggling, you may have people around that just decide to step up and help in any way that they can. And it doesn't
Wow.
always have to be an organ donation. It can be, they help make food for you, they check in on you, they help take you to dialysis, whatever it is.
Throughout this whole process, what was your biggest fear?
So initially, my biggest fear was doing dialysis, like I said, and I had to face that fear and decide how I was going to do it for myself, which I did. Um, And then I think it was, I've got these two young boys that are now 11 and 9, and knowing that they needed me to be around. And so the biggest fear for me was that I was not going to be around for them. But they were also my biggest inspiration, right? It was
Right.
like why I continued to fight despite how sick I got with COVID. I remember there was a night in the hospital where I was watching my saturation levels go down, which is never good as a doctor to watch those numbers go down. And I turned, there was a PA that had come to see me that evening, and I said to her, I've got two young boys, so I need you to do everything that you can to save my life. And so they were my biggest inspiration.
Wow. Wow, that's really powerful. And that actually makes me emotional because I've been rounding on COVID patients the whole pandemic, and it's been young, old, everything in between. And it's been very traumatic seeing,
Yeah.
people dying, trying to do everything you can to save their lives, and some of them you just couldn't do anything. So I'm thankful and I'm glad you're here today with us.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
certainly grateful and I'm blessed.
So my next actually better health than when you started. How long does it take after a kidney transplant for you to get back to your old self or even
Well,
better?
so everybody's going to be different. So it's interesting because I had a creatinine that was around 10 or 11 when I went in for my transplant in May. And within 2 days, it had dropped down to 2 and then continued to slowly get better. But obviously, you are recovering from surgery. You're on all these different medications. It does take your body some time to adjust. But 2 to 3 months out, I started to feel significantly better. Um, Now we're we're a little over 5 months out. I mean, I am back on the tennis court. Tennis is a sport that I play. A couple of weeks ago, I got back out on the tennis court. I'm essentially doing everything now that I used to do, and I feel great.
Good, good. So how important it is to take your medications on schedule? Because I know you're on a lot of medicines, right? To help
Yeah,
might not get rejected.
that's right. So I'm on immunosuppressant medications because whenever you put something foreign in your body wants to attack that. And so to suppress my immune system from doing that, I'm on a couple of different immunosuppressants, which I take twice a day in the morning as well as at night. There are antibacterial, antifungals, antiviral medication that I also take to keep me healthy. And besides that, it's just some vitamins that I take. But it's incredibly important to take those medications. I mean, I've seen people in the hospital where they've gotten a transplant and they stop taking their immunosuppressants and then they go into rejection.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. And you have to take those medicines scheduled at about the same time every day.
That's right. You do. And certainly when they're testing the levels of those medications, the timing of them is really important. So you want to take them the way that they are prescribed. You
Mhm.
certainly don't want to miss dosages. You don't want to stop. And if you're having side effects, you want to talk to your doctors about them before you just decide to stop medications.
Okay, okay. So what thoughts would you share with someone considering being a living kidney donor or an organ donor?
Yeah, so I would say that the opportunity to really change somebody's life and to save somebody's life is incredible. I'm somebody who truly believes that the reason that we are here living our current lives, it's not for us. It's about the impact that we can have on others. And if you're deciding to be an organ donor, you're not just saving that one life, you are impacting all the lives that that person is going to influence in
Mhm.
the future. And so whether it's my dad or my cousin-in-law, I've always been amazed at not just their willingness to give me a kidney, but the pride and the honor that they took in doing so. And so I would encourage people that if you have that opportunity, it should be something that you should consider because you have the power to influence the lives of people and to save their lives.
That's amazing. I just want to say you're such an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Well, look, you might not be popular, but my favorite character is Celestial because
One of the quotes that I wrote down in the book that kind of stood out to me was "Love is the enemy of sound judgment."
She seemed like a very needy woman. And I can't even respect Andre because how do you prey on your friend's wife while he's incarcerated? Like, I just can't get with that. And maybe I got too invested in the book, That good quote.
We are still talking all about the season of fall.
Hey, Miss Cam. Hey, Miss Cam. Hey, Miss Cam, I love you.
So you may ask yourself, is kidney disease preventable? Well, it's yes and no. So in the US, the most common reasons why people go into renal failure or have chronic kidney disease, which is what you get before you end up on dialysis, is if you have uncontrolled diabetes or if your blood pressure is not controlled, if you have obesity, sometimes if you have a family history of both, those things can cause you to have renal failure. And those are actually the most common causes. But those are preventable. If you take care of your diabetes, you take care of your blood pressure, you can prevent your kidneys from failing or at least delay the process some. But in the case of our guest, Dr. Douillon, that wasn't preventable. He had an autoimmune disease, and what that means is your body's attacking its organs. So it's his body attacked his kidneys, right? And so that's an autoimmune disease. That is something that's not preventable. Sometimes you can have a virus, a viral infection that causes you to have kidney failure. Those things are unfortunate, they're not preventable. But the most common causes, fortunately, are preventable. And those are obesity, that blood pressure, and diabetes. Do you want to add anything else?
I think you're spot on. So there are things that we can do every single day that minimizes our risk of kidney disease as well as other diseases. But sometimes things happen, right, that are
Mhm.
beyond our control. And the reality is that we will all face challenges in life, and some of them will be health challenges. And what matters most is going to be how we choose to deal with those challenges. And there are things that we can do every day that will help us overcome, that will help us have a different perspective, that will help us get as healthy as possible.
Right. And so, how come you didn't go into nephrology? That's a kidney doctor. Why didn't you become a kidney doctor? Why did you choose neurology with everything you've gone through?
Yeah, so by the time I was in medical school, I was just over kidney disease. And I did not even want to learn about the kidneys at all when I was studying it in like pathology class in the second year of medical school. I was like, I've got personal history with this. I don't want to read it in a book. I don't want to see the patients with this, nothing. So I stayed
You
away from nephrology.
you probably already knew so much about the kidneys anyway because of your research and everything you've gone through and speaking with so many nephrologists. But then you chose neurology. That's
Yeah,
totally opposite from,
totally.
that organ. Not even
That's
close.
right, completely different. And yet, my knowledge about the brain is incredibly useful in helping people with kidney diseases as well as other diseases. And so
Hmm.
I use that knowledge that I have about how our brain works to help patients with chronic kidney disease, to help patients who are end stage renal failure, to help those patients on dialysis.
Right, right. So the takeaway is you can definitely prevent certain diseases from happening. Right now, we're talking about kidney disease, but if you have high blood pressure and diabetes, that can also cause other things like heart disease, um, strokes, things like that. So take control of your health. You have the power to make a difference with yourself, and it starts with you. Because a lot of us don't go to the doctor. A lot of African Americans are afraid to go see a doctor. So I'm hoping that this conversation will inspire people to take charge of their health.
Absolutely. And I think the reality is that people are not alone, right? So no matter what you're facing, there's always a group of people that have been through what you've been through. Don't be afraid to reach out to those who have walked, the path ahead of you. Certainly, you can always reach out to me if you're facing kidney disease or dialysis or you've got an upcoming transplant, as well as any other medical issues you might be facing.
That's amazing. I just want to say you're such an inspiration. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Thank
Thank you
you.
for having me.
Yeah, is there anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to add for the viewers before we let you go?
Yeah, I think, living a life of purpose is incredibly important. So no matter what challenges that you are facing, always have a bigger picture, always have your purpose in mind. And you should work every day towards that purpose because that will really help you overcome any challenge that you're facing.
Thank you so much for having us. I mean, for coming on to the show and telling us about your story.
Well, thank you for having me.
So more than 90,000 people in the US are waiting for a kidney donation. It is less common for someone who identifies as African American to be a living donor. It is also harder to find deceased donor kidneys because of blood type challenges. You might think that a transplant is more of a last resort, the thing that we do when we run out of options, but that's hardly the case. For most people, doctors would prefer a transplant over dialysis. And that's because people who get transplants generally live longer than those on dialysis. They tend to have a better quality of life, fewer long term health problems. They have more energy, less dietary restrictions, and they enjoy returning to work and travel more freely. If you're a patient in need of a kidney, the thought of asking someone to consider donation can be scary, but needing a new kidney to live is nothing to be ashamed of. Asking for a kidney takes courage, so don't be afraid to ask. Do not count people out. Share your story, speak from the heart, and most importantly, be kind to yourself. It's okay if you don't get the answers you hope for on your first try. But by having the conversation, you're educating others about kidney disease and the importance of organ donation. The more conversations you have, the easier it may become. Raising awareness as well as considering being an organ donor is important, but though so is advocating for friends or for loved ones who needs a kidney transplant. As always, the first step to correcting disparities is recognizing that they exist. Bringing this issue to the forefront and inviting more discussion will help find the best solution. So I encourage every single one of you to join me in championing for someone in the community that's in need of a kidney donation by becoming an advocate and by spreading the word. Thanks so much to our listeners for tuning in. See you on the next episode of Health Moments with Dr. Ava.
Every discipline starts with creating a habit. Find a plan that works for you. I know you can put a reminder in your phone, call so-and-so in 30 days. You can't use the excuse that, oh, I'm an introvert or I'm an extrovert, you know, stuff people like to say. Nah, if you're not outgoing, right, you better get going, because that's the only way networking works.